Very happy to be here again with all of you. Please feel free to use the chat feature today. Maybe start out by sharing with us where you're joining us from. It's been really amazing to see people joining in from all across the globe, and we love to see that. So mention where you are participating in from. And as always, I am Petra Rassel, Head of Coaching here at LeggUP. We are a professional development platform specializing in career coaching and helping organizations to transform through development of their leaders and employees. You are joining us today for part 6 of our 6-part series. So we're wrapping up our first series here today, which was Thriving from Home. And it is our mission to support leaders to rise to the challenge created by COVID-19. And our webinar today is titled Team Mindset. We will continue to support you here over the coming weeks with a new series starting next week, Championing Personal Excellence, where we will dive into topics like stress management, anxiety reduction, and self-leadership, as they all pertain to how we can set ourselves and our remote teams up for success while working from home under these unprecedented circumstances. And on that note, it is my true pleasure and distinct honor to introduce our expert on today's topic, Team Mindset, LeggUP coach, experienced executive coach and corporate trainer, trilingual and multicultural coach with over 22 years of experience working with teams in Japan, where he learned to incorporate Eastern cultural values and a V mentality into his coaching, and developed a keen understanding of exactly those time-tested factors that allowed his teams to thrive in the face of disaster or crisis. Please welcome Mete Yazici, who is joining us live today from Tokyo. A very special welcome to you, Mete. Thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with you today. And on that note, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Petra. It's really a pleasure to be part of the community today. Although it is 3 a.m. in Tokyo on May 1st, I'm completely alive. Somehow it's really exciting. It's really exciting, and it's also exciting to see the number of participants. It's very well. Thank you. When excuse me, when Petra and I talked about team mindset, I really love this topic because there's so much that I thought I could really reflect based on my experience, and I'm gonna go through as I go through the presentation. Hopefully, I'm gonna share some of my insights after living in Japan for such a long time. It's such an interesting thing that, Petra, maybe you also reflected that because you also live in different cultures. There's never an end, right? You always keep learning new things. And that's the excitement about it.
Always something that comes to the equation that's further enriching what you've already know and experienced, right? So that's the beauty of this. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've been through different things and different periods in Japan. And now the current crisis and how Japanese are coping with it, or the different aspects. I'm just learning new things again every day. it's really exciting. So I just want to slowly start the presentation. First, just want to explain myself. There's a lot of text here, but basically I came to Japan around 94, 95. This was a long time ago, and that was the end of the bubble economy in Japan. When I was a student in Turkey, we had this image of very powerful Japanese economy, unique Japanese management practices, and for a young student, it was really attractive to come to Asia, come to Japan and learn about all these things. And I was happy that I received a scholarship from my university to do my MBA here in Japan. And afterwards, I found work in Japan, but it wasn't easy because the bubble economy was gone and it was really difficult. But using my engineering degree, I started to find good work in internet economy, and then afterwards stayed in many companies and worked in many companies as mostly manager. I managed only the Japanese speaking professionals. So my teams were always Japanese. and I had the privilege as well as the challenge of managing a Japanese team as a foreign manager. So and I think my biggest experience in Japan and biggest awakening happened in 2011. For those of you who would remember, Japan was northern and eastern Japan was hit by triple disasters. A big earthquake happened with the magnitude of 9 twice, and then there were like tsunami waves. In some places, it was basically 30 meters or so. 30 meters of tsunami wave is like unbelievable height. And then, of course, it triggered a nuclear disaster in Fukushima. And we were in Tokyo, we were not in the center, but we were very badly impacted. And I was also impacted when the earthquake happened. I was actually under the desk trying to call my mom through Skype and try to tell her that I was okay. Because I knew that the phone lines will be extremely busy afterwards. And that was like a disaster in epic portions. And lots of people walked back home. They had to walk from Tokyo. In Tokyo, 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers they have to walk because trains didn't work for a long time. Yeah, for those of you that will remember. So what happened was that at that time was that for during that week, as well as the following times, I observed my team members as well as other teams and managers, how they really prioritize things. I was at that time working for the insurance company, and we really prioritized the safety of our employees, of course, and the customers. And people just traveled long distances to come to home, come to the company. Work from home wasn't that common in 2011. And then afterwards, I saw the communities in Japan, especially northern Japan, how they came together to support each other and rebuild the economy, rebuild the country. And that's where I saw some of the practices where they would put the differences aside and just unite in the common action. And that's why when Petra reached out to me, I thought this was a great example to remember those practices and again talk through it again. Yeah. Petra, when I first gave you the proposal, what did you think about it? Reflecting Japan.
I think it's beautiful how we can implement a lot of those learnings right into our current situation. So with the skill sets and the approaches that we have, and that we particularly here at LeggUP hone in on and try to really make everyone aware that it takes a certain skill set to navigate these situations in a effective and productive way. How these components that are really time tested, as you pointed out, with several disasters that hit that area in one time, really how that complements what we're practicing here, and how the multitude of different factors really creates the best results eventually, right? So I really like that specific aspect and that insight that you have there. So I'm very excited to see where taking us.
Thank you. I was also reflecting on the word like resilience, because there are so many, like we talk about resilience almost on daily basis now, and I started to reflect back on that it's almost like maybe like a vaccine, that you start to get small shocks and it makes you stronger every time.
Build that muscle, like that. Yes.
Yeah. And I was also reflecting quite a lot about previous generations, for example, our grandfathers or grandfathers who went through so many things when they were young, like wars, famine, migrations, all these kind of things, and they were really resilient people. And now I remember, I kind of relates to how I see Japan from that light as well, that in Japan, teamwork I saw in 2011 means survival, because especially in old times, like what is the strength of one individual in front of a huge natural disaster like a big earthquake or famine or tsunami or volcanoes? If people don't support each other in some way, there's no way people could survive and communities could survive. And this is the picture that I'm sharing here is Tokyo, the central Tokyo. The tower on the left hand side is Tokyo Tower. And Tokyo Tower was built in 1964, 62, 64, just before the first Tokyo Olympics. And it was a huge effort by Japanese government and people to revive the country after the Second World War, after the destruction of Second World War. I saw some pictures where the scene that we are seeing right now in Tokyo, there was nothing. Like in 1945, there was nothing, basically completely nothing after the bombardments. So I used to work very nearby Tokyo Tower, and I used to watch actually that brown and red lights from the meeting room. So it's sometimes amazing how the country built itself in 20 years after the Second World War and hosted the first Olympics for them. And that was done by the teamwork, huge teamwork, and how
It's
to
definitely
survive.
a symbol of force and power, yes.
Yes, and huge resilience, huge resilience. Just a reminder to people, but probably for those of you who are joining from San Francisco area, the earthquakes is not something foreign to them. For some countries, earthquakes, they have no idea how scary it can be. Japan has its own shares in earthquakes, volcanoes, and all kinds of natural disasters. I'm not going to go through the statistics one by one, but if you look at it, one country with population of 120 million has that portion of things happening to them on daily basis. So that's why I meant what I said: survival and teamwork. So here I just want to share with the audience some of the things that I encountered and observed in Japan. First, there's in-group thinking and team identity. They really cherished creating this identity and try to create bonds with that. When a crisis hits, when they go through hardships and difficulty, they try to show high spirits. There's a term called genki in Japanese that it's like I have the natural energy. It translates basically I have the natural energy. That after the big earthquake, for example, we had shortages of several fundamental things in Tokyo because most of the things were coming from the earthquake areas, and we had to work long hours to support the customers. And when I was talking to Japanese staff and managers, everybody just kept smiling, and they were not really forcing it too much. It was just energized to serve the customers and do their work. And when I asked them how they're feeling, everybody was like, "I'm genki," And also, I think it's comes from this collective identity that if somebody says, "Well, it's kind of if you just reflect on the others, they feel like maybe it is going to bring everybody down. So you just have to do your best to look resilient and be resilient, so that it creates a collective resilience." So another thing that I always observe is that team success comes first. Naturally, people say we, as like when they talk about the team, like when they talk about the success or achievement, they say we did it most of the time. And it's a very telling story. They try to not, I don't want to say undervalue, but not emphasize too much the individual achievement. It's almost like an embarrassment to talk about and take individual credit when it was actually a teamwork.
Yeah, very interesting. As apart from what we have more of a structured individualism, right? So
Yes.
there's really more that
Yeah.
is in group thinking, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, even in the corporate world, people know that as individuals, unless you have support of somebody, it's very difficult to achieve anything like a project or anything. You just always depend on somebody else in the corporate, and that interconnectivity and interbeing, in a sense, is emphasized and kind of cherished and fostered verbally. Nobody can achieve anything by themselves.
Right.
There's always a help from somebody. Like there are lots of, for example, support teams involved. For example, even for sales, without the support from customer service or accounting and finance and IT support, for example, nothing can be much done. There's always a team effort. When I was in school, one of my classmates said, this was an MBA class, and he was out of the company for 2 years. And he said that the first thing that he would do, he was asked to do when he went back to the company, was to go back to the factory floor and learn about the new products and learn about the new practices. Just work on the line, like from day one. And then I started to learn about this policy called, as they call it, Genba Shugi in Japanese, that the actual experience coming from the actual operations is very valuable. So you cannot double guess things. You always have to be on the front lines and learn about it. What this means is that the collective experience of the team members is very important for the manager. And I'm going to elaborate on that. But managers, as they get detached from the operations and focus on the team leadership, of course, it becomes a bit abstract.
And I like the idea of how you, or how it affords each individual to relate better to the other roles, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise you don't know. It's always like somebody else, right?
Yeah.
There's a great aspect of, I think, psychological safety. And for those of you who have been to Japan, maybe you have experienced this feature that people socialize a lot after the work. They go to like dinners, they go to drinking, they try to know each other. Of course, this is a cultural phenomenon that's also been changing. When I joined the workforce in 1990s, this was very much like the norm. But these days, younger generation put more emphasis on their privacy and their work-life balance. So it's a huge issue in Japan in terms of the generational gap we talk about, that the older generations, including myself, we expect to go out and socialize, but the younger generation says no. But I think there was a function, to be honest with you, in terms of the psychological safety. What this brings is, I think, three takeaways, and I would like to ask people if they have any questions. One is, what are the things that we can do in this current crisis? One is try to evoke or try to use the collective wisdom, rather than thinking that the managers have all the wisdom and all the know-how. Maybe as a team, how are we looking at the situation? How are we looking at our customers? And the next one is, for example, collective action. It's not, again, one person. Collectively, what are the things that we are going to be doing? So this is one aspect.
I may want to just point out for everyone that we are obviously, as always, using our chat feature here and the Q&A box. If that's something you would like to shoot Mete a couple of questions through, we're happy to address those live as we go through his presentation. So again, feel free to make use of that and pose your questions, please, in the chat for us.
Yeah, I would also would like to invite people to participate from angles. For example, if for example the participants been to Asia, not only Japan but Asia, if they had a cultural observation, I would really much like to hear and share in the audience.
Insights, yes.
I think that will be. It could be Korea, China, Vietnam, Taiwan, anywhere Asia. I think there are common features. So I would really like to hear their experiences. Sometimes it might be even like a mini culture shock. It might be interesting to share those ones.
Yes.
Recently, when I was talking to my clients, all of them are, of course, working from home. Managers supporting the team members through email chats and video chats. I was amazed by some of the things that I've been hearing, especially the managers who have been managing customer service and sales teams. That the two principles that I was trying to say, collective action, wisdom and collective action, they were very much like implementing it. They were trying to see how team members feel and what are the things that they can do collectively to tackle the problems, not only their team problems, but customer problems as well. And the third point that I can raise as a takeaway from the Japanese experience is that although Japanese managers may come across as really hierarchical and with a huge power distance, it doesn't translate in that sense most of the time. The Japanese leadership takes a facilitative role so that they facilitate this collective action and wisdom. Yes, they may do the decision making. Sometimes even may come across as top down, but the good Japanese managers that I observe usually take a back seat in facilitating. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to go through a bit of exercise with the participants here, and I would like people to reflect on 2 points as designing the future of the team. One point that I would like people to reflect a bit on the psychological safety. What this picture shows is that we can picture the psychological safety with a linear line. For example, on the left-hand side, member B is psychologically more distant to you, for example, manager, than person A. Where on the right-hand side, there's equal distance. So let's just take a minute. If you think about the team members around you and kind of like try to map which ones are naturally more closer to you. You have emotional closeness with them versus the ones who are not. Maybe if people can reflect on it a bit, it might be.
And it's interesting when you talk about diversity, and I would love for everyone again to utilize the chat box here. I think it's a really super interesting reflection as it pertains to how we easily create more closeness or bond easier, right? When
Yeah,
I'm on your diversity
yeah,
comment earlier,
yeah,
how we easily create a closer connection, or what you mentioned, interconnectedness, right? With people that are like us more
yeah,
like
yeah,
us, so to say, and
yeah,
how we have to put more effort in, right? With folks that are different in whichever way, right? Based on values, concepts, how they express their values, how they express certain emotions or thoughts, right? It's interesting how we relate so easy and create that connection, and sometimes we struggle where there are differences, right? And really have to reflect on that. How is
yeah.
that turning out for the team? Yes.
And I'm going to cover the diversity aspects after these slides, but that usually happens as Peter you exactly said it. Unconsciously, I think we feel comfortable with somebody who is really like us, from, for example, from our gender or from our national ethnic origin, or it could be somebody who has the same experience. I remember some of the times where I was going out with my friends coming from the same company. For example, we moved the company together, then we would always like be together going to lunch or coffees. And we would not really be aware of the impact on the other people. um,
Very good
so
example. Yeah.
some of the things that I observed working from home these days is that, the managers are encouraged to reach to the team members one-to-one, even in a video conferencing environment, and kind of do the check-ins. Check in whether people are doing okay. You can also remember that the Japanese houses are very small. So when people go to work from home, it's very, very difficult to focus on the job. And if they have a family member who might be also sick, or there's somebody in the community, it really creates a kind of emotional burden on the people. So managers take time to reach out to members individually.
More frequently. Yeah.
Yeah, and that creates a golden opportunity almost to shorten this emotional distance and create even bigger psychological safety by taking the advantage. I don't want to say that this term, but making the good use of this crisis in these times to reach out to the people that we may not really be too close. It almost gives an
Build the
excuse.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost an excuse. And there's a common topic, right? You don't have to even think about a topic. The topic is already there. How are we doing? Are you still supporting the business well? How is your family doing? All these kind of things. I think creates a great opportunity. Yeah. Um, Also would like to reflect on another point which might be very timely going forward for all of us. We are going to be entering, we are already in a situation where I think there's going to be able to uncertainty. And uncertainty means people are usually worried and anxious. But also uncertainty means there's a lot of information coming in from all these directions about the direction of the economy, shifts in the customer tastes, customer preferences, and buying behaviors. And information comes from everywhere. The model that I wanted to show on the left-hand side is maybe more on the old model where managers get the information from their managers and maybe the strategic planning departments. And they would dissipate the information to their subordinates. But on the right-hand side, the model that maybe we will need to be more conscious these days is everybody can be an information hub these days. It should not necessarily come from the manager, but it can come from any direction and then can be shared within the team. I just would like to reflect on this a few seconds. Which one is the current model for the participants?
And again, we can use the chat box here if you like to share what you're experiencing with Mete.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I'm definitely definitely a lot of things come up, right? When you think about how the information is flowing at the moment.
Yeah,
What can we
yeah,
do to enhance communication? How do
yeah,
we improve on our communication style, right? Given the
yeah.
circumstances, all those things. Yes.
One of the customer managers that I was working is my client. Um, I think business as usual practice was customer service reps would enter the information to an information system, and the manager would monitor that information, and then afterwards create a strategy or create tactics around it. So, but and also would maybe chat to the reps. But from working from home, the amount of information now comes is too much, and the manager was feeling that maybe this way was not working and it wasn't very timely. So what they started to do was they started to this series of meetings where maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes with all customer reps, and each rep would choose a characteristics or typical call coming from a previous day and talk about what was really troubling the customer. You know, we all know wants and needs, but what was the real need or the trouble that was escalated by the customer? Everybody would reflect on it as a team on video conferencing, and they would come up, they would analyze the situations, whether there's commonalities, and then they would strategize how the calls would be taken on that day. So the collective wisdom is being implemented in that way.
Yeah. Very nice.
Manager kind of, again, started to go more on the facilitative role than just like, I need to know everything, but because otherwise I cannot strategize. It's impossible. Now it's impossible.
With respect to information, we have a very nice idea here shared by one guest in
Yeah.
our audience, and that goes, of course, into the various forms of information technology that's at our disposal. And thankfully, we have a lot of apps that we can really get to good use here. One of which is Slack. It's a newer company communication tool, and we actually use the same here at LeggUP, so I'm very familiar with it. And this person here mentioned we have a channel in Slack where everyone can post. So
Wow.
to your point with collective wisdom, right? We can all share and bring some insight and perspective into the conversation, and that's a convenient way to do so, right? So thank you for sharing, Nikki, and back to you, Mete.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Definitely, those tools are available, um, and also those tools make it easier. They have also lots of filtering functions, and they may create great insights also to share those insights. I think that's what we are after. Not only share the information, but share the insights. Um, so I think that will be really valuable. Yeah, thank you very much. That was really useful. Thank you. Just a quick reminder also to the participants, there are certain things that we might not be aware, but they may kill and very badly influence the teamwork. Just as a small check to see whether we have some of those things. Sometimes the team and teamwork can be negatively impacted by lack of direction. Lack of transparency may make people uncomfortable if they don't understand the background information. Sometimes it happens, unfortunately, in corporate environments where, the leaders are coming across as too strong, almost sometimes threatening. Some members might feel excluded. Going back to Petra's point of view, for example, that they are new to the team, they come from a slightly different value systems, and they feel that they are not included in the team discussions, then they may feel excluded. Sometimes disruptive rumors may also take place. Disruptive behaviors like ignoring people or always cutting them out. Sometimes some members feel favoritism is in place and they may be hurt. They may feel that there are not enough opportunities. And sometimes the personal boundaries might be crossed and it might make people uncomfortable. The reason I brought all these things is more like a reminder that we as leaders, we may think that everything is normal, but sometimes we face a crisis that then we realize that it wasn't the case. In my experience, definitely, and Petra, maybe you may jump in here, that I've been hearing cases sometimes. I had the cases where a member came and we were in the one-on-one meeting and she started crying suddenly. And I didn't understand the reason why, but there was a conflict between two members, which I wasn't really aware. that was going on for months even, and she was in the verge of collapse, and I didn't know about it for a long time. It didn't occur to me. But if you are perceptive enough, especially in working from home situations, what is stressing our members, especially like conflict between members, maybe we can take more, I don't want to say preemptive measures, or we can work around it. There were other cases where I realized that people were creating rumors on the social media, and it was against the company policy, of course, and it was a compliance issue, but you would not know about it, some of the things. So working from home, not only working from home, but being manager and leader brings, I think, certain responsibilities. And it's not about policing, but it's about creating a good teamwork, that everybody is a resource to be utilized and everybody can participate.
Also interesting to see that, of course, the things that you mention here, and that's not all of it, but of course, a good selection, and how these things all are very similar, right? Regardless of where we are in the world. How do people feel excluded or not valued or not heard, right? It's pretty much boiling down to the same things in most parts of the world and in most cultures, right? So yeah, we have different tools in our toolbox for optimizing things and make them come together better. But we also have very common hurdles, right, to success and to team success. And thank you for bringing some of that up. And yeah, that's a good reminder of some of the things that we should always be aware of and address, to your point with your example, address early in the situation.
Early, yeah.
Start building up, yeah.
With so much uncertainty and pressures on the economic coming from the economic side, the point that I want to also make here is that we cannot, as leaders, afford to lose a resource. I think all resources are extremely valuable these times. Their wisdom, their actions, and longer social lack of social psychological safety, or lack of safety in an environment, and all these issues about the killers of the teamwork may alienate some of the resources, and they will not bring their best to the team, which is gonna hurt the team in the short run and long run. So that's why it's more like a best use of the resource allocation.
Yeah, very good point.
This leads to the conversation of diversity. When I was preparing the slide, I was also reflecting, can we really say Japan is a diverse society? Am I telling a lie here? Well, actually, afterwards, what I reflected was that Japan looks pretty homogeneous from outside, but inside it's not so much. There are huge variations within Japan, based on, first of all, the regions. People from Tokyo and people from Osaka, even Osaka and Kyoto, are like 1 hour by bus. Very different cultures, very different attitudes, and different dialects. And so people from Tokyo, when they have to work with Osaka, it's a culture. There's a cultural gap. And people feel a lot of stress by interacting with each other. I hear the stories all the time, and that people from Tokyo are seen as more reserved and more selective of the words, when Osaka people are seen as stereotypical, as more direct, and very much like, I don't want to say stereotype too much, but a bit noisy side, on the noisy side. And that working culture is very much a part of Japan. But beyond all these surface differences, Japanese people take a pride in this phrase called millions of gods and spirits, which means that the natural forces and the values that govern Japan for centuries was very diverse, and it was okay to be diverse. When Buddhism came to Japan in 17th century or 8th century, maybe there was an early clash with Shinto values, but they started to coexist. So if you ask people what kind of religious practices they have, first they get puzzled because that question is never really relevant to them, and then they reflect that most of the time they go to Buddhist and Shinto shrines all together. It's always like even the same location, and most of the people have Christian weddings.
So it's not an either or, right? It's more
no, how to integrate in many ways. So, and that brings again to the resilience that I see in the culture, where Especially I'm a big reader of HBR articles. Whenever I read about VUCA, extreme VUCA that we'll be facing going forward, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, most of the authors that I read, they reflect that you can never be prepared. You can you can just be agile as possible, and that's all. And then afterwards, how you can get back. And that's where the diversity comes into the picture, where if you have a diverse workforce with different levels of resilience, then when we talk about collective wisdom and action, then that will be the spring, almost that will be the base that will pull the team together, and create a resilient response to VUCA situations. Would like to also emphasize, going back to the inclusion aspect, that just having, for example, in Japan, they say certain percentage of people should come from, females, certain percentage should be with the people with disabilities. But for most of us, it's never a number game. It should be about the values. It should be about the attitudes and behaviors that people bring to the table, rather than their appearance. It's just,
yeah, that's a very nice differentiator. I think when the conversation shifts to diversity inclusion, that's basically where the thinking is going first, right?
yeah.
And then you realize it's really diversity of thought, right?
Thought, yeah, thoughts,
Anything else, that's
values.
what we're trying to do and implement, and really, as you say, basically harvest the collective wisdom of what comes to the table through diversity in that sense, right? So very important. Yeah.
Sometimes people think, oh, it, when we talk about, for example, in discussing in Japan about diversity, some people think it is just a CSR thing, like just the numbers again. But actually it is not. It's not about CSR at all. It's really about how to create innovation, how to create resilience in the teams, to make this team stronger in this kind of situations. So maybe this will create another awareness that diverse teams will deal with crisis much better than other teams. Maybe that will be a good training opportunity in the future.
Yes.
Just wanted to reflect for everybody again, what is the diversity, what is the value diversity brings to their teams? And again, thinking about working from home situations now, what are the things that we can do to empower our team members? Maybe we can now slow down here and just think about how well do we know them actually? Like, I'm not talking about private and family things, but their attitudes, their values, especially the values. Petra, I really like what you said about like emphasize the values. Values towards work, values towards family, values towards quality. What do we know?
And I mean, in some ways, I always think, and we all know this, right? How you do one thing is how you do everything. So life, both privately and professionally, there's always an interface, right? How we show up on one side is how we show up on the other side.
Exactly.
And I think to know the whole person, as we say, right, is part of it is definitely to understand a little bit, where do they come from when they show up in the morning, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what's their context and what makes their heart sing, right? What is really a driver motivator for people, and understand a little bit that perspective. And I think that goes a long way, right? We see that more and more, that really that extra effort to get to know someone more, and that curiosity to approach someone beyond just the task, right? It goes a long way. Yeah.
You brought a great point, and you said the whole person. I guess crisis, this kind of situations, we may create an opportunity to look at somebody with completely new lenses. Maybe we are going to notice something that we haven't noticed before. The way they'll deal with stress, they'll deal with family support, work support, working with the customers, bringing value to the work. Maybe we need to give them those opportunities to shine by empowering them, asking them more open-ended questions, and maybe coaching them in the real true sense of coaching, by letting them come up with solutions, letting them come up with ideas. Maybe that's their time to shine. And I think we can really see them now in action. What do you think, Petra, about from as two coaches? What do
Beautifully
you think?
said, yes. And I
Yeah,
think another item to be probably more aware of at the moment is how do people cope, right?
exactly. Yeah.
And what's working, what's not working, and where can we pick up on that with others around us and implement some of those techniques, you know, that have worked, or share what has worked for us, and just, yeah, support each other in that way, right? That's also very much a connection maker in that sense, right? How do you cope with things?
And how do you how then people learn from each other through coping?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I'm hoping that this experience globally will bring a new level of awareness about the team mindset, because I think that's really beyond the teamwork, because team mindset means, again, this collective wisdom and collective action, and collective coping, maybe, in a sense too.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe we are going to see our colleagues differently even after the crisis is finished. So yeah, but I want to underline again that we should really try to learn from our members as much as possible, and see how they're going to be contributing and shining through empowering them. Um, Working from home means we cannot really be at their desk all the time, which means that we have to trust them. We have to trust that they know what they're doing. They're doing their best in the given situations, and just, you know, held each other accountable for our results. You know, I'm curious to see how this will be seen in, you know, next generations. Which brings my other point. Um, you know, I was also reflecting about this a month ago or so, especially when we were facing the situation in business, that what will be the ways for me to really create a turning point for my career. And I really like this turning point events. And here I want to invite everybody to start, like, taking a deep breath first, and kind of maybe feel comfortable in their chairs, and just a bit of visualization exercise here. If you want to close your eyes, that's also okay. But I would love to really invite people to share their ideas and share their thoughts here as well. I really very much like to do so. So let's imagine ourselves in April 2021. And you are sitting in your chair, looking back, and say, what a year it was. And at that moment, that is the thing. What kind of a year was that? How do we want to remember this year? So I would like you to complete these sentences. I'm so happy that I, da da da, for my team. We, da da da, together. I'm so grateful that, and I'm glad that I didn't. Let's just reflect on these sentences for a few seconds. A year later, when you say what a year it was, what would you be happy for? What is the thing that you want to achieve together? What do you want to do together? Grateful for, or you don't want to regret?
I'm just curious if you already had some feedback on this. I'm sure you've heard some responses, right? So I'm curious to hear what showed up for folks.
Yeah, yeah. If somebody can unmute themselves and talk about their thoughts, I would really love to hear what everybody would say.
So yeah, again, we have the chat box for you. We, as Mete just invited, are happy to hear you live too, if you like to elaborate a little bit on what's popping up for you. Mete, would you like to share what came up to you for you when you first participated in this exercise?
Yeah, and also, you know, other webinars that I was participating, I was nicely surprised that people had a positive outlook actually about the year that might come. Um, People, for example, some of the things that I was hearing was that, for example, this one, I'm so happy that I was with my team all the time. I was there with them. I was there for them. I stood up for my team. We supported our customers. So we supported our customers together was the sentence that I keep hearing about from my Japanese clients.
And I want to mention real quick to all of you too, we also have, of course, the raise hand feature that probably some of you saw already. If you want to use that feature, we'll be happy to unmute you and then have you jump into the conversation that way. Thank you, Mete. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, supporting the team together, supporting the customers together just keeps coming up all the time. Also, I think people feel grateful. Different things, people feel grateful about different things. Some people say that, for example, they reach out to their senior management and get direction, more clear direction at that time. They were grateful for that kind of direction. They were also very grateful to the IT teams who supported working from home for installing different applications and sometimes troubleshooting even the Wi-Fi routers at home.
All the little things that become really important, right?
Yeah.
All the things that are happening in the back room that you normally don't really give much thought to that really are critical in those times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the people are grateful for some of the team members who really stood up and came up with some creative solutions. Some people said they're grateful that they have a job. They have a job and they have a regular income, unlike somebody else. Some people were grateful that their company's business model was robust enough, and they could really get a pride in it. Some people were also grateful that they were working for an innovative company, and they saw that their company would bring new solutions to the customers. Very much so.
So it's almost you're working on an issue and you're not working within the team. You're working on implications that has for the greater good, right? So when you're talking about customers, I think there's a broadened consciousness, a broadened perspective too about it's going even beyond the team, right? It's not just going beyond the individual, but it's also going beyond the team towards the greater good, right? How do we support people better out there with what we do? And I think there were some really nice examples, of course, here as well. When you think about a lot of factories here that started switching quickly to producing some fabric masks for people. We had even industrial plants that started producing ventilators. So we had a lot of quick action swiftly, right, collaboratively, based on how can we make this better for everyone, and we're all in this together. Yep. So yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. Also, some of the other gratefulness comes from the family, because working from home means partners are together with the kids most of the time, and they have to share the work. and you know, maybe that collaboration wasn't there before, but when both partners are working from home with young kids, it's very challenging. In terms of the you know, cooking, in terms of cleaning, in terms of taking care of the kids, and that collaboration between the partners has become so important. So some people were reflecting on how grateful they were for their partnerships and fostering that relationship. Some people in the last sentence, they said they are glad that they don't want to rush things. Maybe they want to take a bit of time to reflect on what this really means for them. They said they were really happy that they have, for example, a good meditative practice, and they didn't really you know, dived into some of the more unsupportive habits, like for example, overeating or over drinking. So those are the things that, rather than the other parts of like not doing too much, how can I say, opposite of self-care. You know, so yeah, not giving to the anxiety was, I think, another thing. Accepting the anxiety but not giving into anxiety was also something that was mentioned. Yeah. What are the things that came to your mind, Petra, from this reflection point of view, personally?
Well,
Anything?
I think one has definitely to do with where you just left off in terms of what are some of the choices we can make, right, to show up better for self, for others, and for society, right, in terms of where we can best contribute in terms of our role and what we're offering. And so I think one of the things that I'm glad that I didn't do personally was to get too caught up in something you also mentioned earlier, you know, the information that's coming from all sides,
Yeah.
some of which really does not support you to create calm and balance. It actually gets you further off balance, and it heightens your anxiety level and with that your stress level. And so you really have to make some decisions in terms of how much information, maybe how often, right, and for how long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad that, you know, I was really able to manage that type of information that I felt was not necessarily supporting me, and starting to be a lot more choosy, you know, in when, how often, and for how long I'm going to update myself on the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, again, whatever your coping mechanism is, right? If it's mindfulness practice, if it's meditation, if it's just making good choices on a daily basis to set yourself up for more success, right? Or for what you can accomplish if you do. That in itself radiates calm and ease rather than stress and anxiety. And I think with that, you know, having that kind of energy that even comes through on a virtual call, on a video conference, right? It can be very calming and soothing if people manage that and can basically lead by example, right? And be a bit more composed and a bit more mindful how that anxiety, for example, if we don't control that energy better, how that jumps over to the next person, right? And how it
Exactly.
impacts negatively rather than positively. So the idea of what can we do, and I think that came through in your presentation nicely, how can we positively impact, right? And make
Yes.
things better. It's
Yeah.
not to ignore anything or play things down. It still keeps a very realistic lens on things. But it is at the same time, you know, how can we regulate, how can we self-regulate and cope in a way that is helpful to the ones around us, right?
Especially that comes really important. It's very important in the team setting, where if the manager is not managing their self well, it's very difficult to get it across to the team members. Like in mindfulness, we say it, or the self-care, we talk about it, like unless
Yeah.
you know, the oxygen mask comes in the plane, unless the parents put the oxygen mask first themselves, they cannot put it on the babies, right? So
Yeah.
that's very much the same with if managers don't have enough oxygen, how they can provide oxygen to other team members. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, anybody in the audience who has a different interesting way of sharing the anxiety, reducing mechanisms, control mechanisms, I would like to hear. What are
Well,
the...
keep an eye out for that on the chat box, Mete. I will alert you if we have some
Yeah.
more feedback coming through.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I would really want to hear what are the bad habits that you have that you noticed
Yeah.
during the crisis.
I'm sure there are some for everyone as well, right?
Yeah.
Always know yourself better after something came along that didn't quite sit too well with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, this is the end of my day today. I'm just gonna go to bed. But for you, maybe this is the start of a new day. So I have 4 points that maybe you can start reflecting, starting from today, during the lunch break today as well, and maybe going back to going to bed in the nighttime. So let's design tomorrow, your tomorrow, together. When you open your laptop tomorrow, what will be in your mind? What will be in your mind? If you think about it, what is the mail may not be the right thing. Like maybe it is about calm, maybe it is about service, maybe it's about empowering the teams, or maybe it's about curiosity about team members. How are they doing? We usually focus too much on the task. Oh, I have to look at my emails in the morning. But maybe we have to put an intent here. When you open your laptop, what will be on your mind? What will be the intent tomorrow morning? Tomorrow morning, when you start your work, who are you going to reach out to? From your team members, from your customers? Who is the one that you haven't been talking recently? Who are you going to reach out tomorrow? If you make that list today, then you know what you're going to be doing tomorrow morning. Your team meetings. What is the thing that you want to change? What will you change about your team meetings starting from tomorrow? Interactivity, psychological safety, empowerment, collective feedback, collective wisdom. And finally, what will be your top leadership quality or principle you will leverage? These might come across as a bit abstract questions, but for example, honoring diversity could be one. Empowering teams could be one. Serving the customers better than anybody else could be one. Staying on top of trends might be another one. Innovation could be another one. Yeah. Being a coach, you always ask these kind of questions, right, Petra?
Well, I like it because it really leads into how can you develop a routine or a practice, right? And we're always looking forward. We're always, as you said so nicely, create what we hope to see, you know, tomorrow and the next day and going forward. And given the uncertainty, we still, I think these circumstances, they really let us grow in a way of what can we do starting today or tomorrow, right? That will really lead us forward in a sustainable way.
Yep.
So if this is working now, it will most definitely become more and more challenging in our world, even without a coronavirus, right? We know that our work of the future will become more and more challenging. How do we keep up? How do we make things work? How do we want to handle and manage things going forward? And a lot of the practices that we may get inspired to implement are the ones that really carry us forward for the long term, right? And I like that very much about where we are here in your presentation. So again, feel free to share some feedback while we're still here and we're still having the chat box open. I want to thank Mete for joining us again today from Tokyo and sharing this really valuable insight of what we can implement in addition to what we usually have in our toolbox to empower teams and really bring that spirit forth that is needed for all of us to collectively move on to the next chapter. We probably all feel a bit like we're not going to return to where we were, right? We're going to come out differently and hopefully more collectively and inclusively. I want you all to know we will be here again next week. Our next series will be championing personal excellence, and we will dive into topics such as stress management and anxiety reduction. So a little bit of an elaboration on today's takeaways. Please also see our closeout page when you come out of Zoom for our most recent product release, fresh out of LeggUP Labs, excuse me, is our assessment, the Career Pulse assessment. We invite all of you to take a sample and navigate that with us. You will be offered a report in less than 10 minutes, and it should be a really great experience to feel out where you're at in terms of productivity and well-being currently as you're working remotely. And it will allow you also to re-register for next week's webinar. We will be very happy to welcome you again. And thank you, Mete, for sharing your insights. I wish all of you a wonderful afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.